Hello, my name is Dr. Funda Goldman. I'm a licensed naturopathic physician with a private practice in Stratford, Connecticut. And today I wanted to discuss homeopathy for when the world is too much, and specifically the Bach Flower Remedy Aspen in this regard. So this talk was actually a bit motivated by current world affairs. There's a lot going on in the world between the pandemic and now there's been a recent military invasion. And for many people, this is all kind of stirring a lot of things within and creating a lot of anxiety. And so I thought talking about Bach Flower Remedy Aspen may be beneficial, not just for this time, but for general conditions such as some people might be experiencing. So let's get into it. Before we get too far along, please note the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. For any symptoms that persist or worsen, please consult with a qualified medical professional. And homeopathy can and should be used with other mental health modalities as part of a comprehensive treatment program. So just a word about Bach Flower Remedies generally. Bach Flower Remedies are a kind of homeopathy, which is a whole paradigm of energy medicine. If you're interested in more background or history on homeopathy and or Bach flowers, you can find that at the beginning of my Bach Flower Remedy video on Walnut. But the general idea with Bach Flower Remedies is that disease originates from an inner struggle. And I found that these can be very effective for different sorts of mental, emotional, and spiritual conditions that I find for my patients. So the keynote with Aspen, of all the different Bach Flower remedies, why would somebody be looking or thinking about Aspen as a remedy, is the keynote is unconscious anxiety. And so the inner state of being that's problematic for somebody experiencing an Aspen state is that they have difficulty differentiating between themselves and others, and specifically their energy. So it's more of, again, a subtle type of thing, but they have difficulty differentiating between their thoughts and emotions and feelings versus other people. So let's take a closer look at that. So how would this inner symptom of not being able to differentiate between self and others, how would this show up in a more sort of external or more sort of concrete way that would be more easily identifiable to somebody else? So somebody with Aspen symptoms, they would kind of be the sort of person who doesn't seem to have much of a protective layer, and they may have been told many times in their life, you're just too sensitive. Because they sort of react and respond to everything, and maybe more so than the average person. So part of this is that the Aspen person is more sensitive to emotional, spiritual, and even psychic energies from other people, places, events, that sort of thing. And so they can kind of carry other people's energy rather than just stay centered and focused and grounded in their own energy. And so what can often happen with them is that they're constantly flooded with thoughts and images. It may even be while they're sleeping. So this may be like a lot of dreams or nightmares, that sort of thing. But anyway, there's this sort of unknown or unaware source of disturbance. And this creates fear because you're constantly sort of downloading these thoughts and images and feelings and kind of energies, and it's very overwhelming for somebody who's in this type of state. And it causes fear because they're not sure exactly what to trust, and so they get kind of a bad feeling, and then they sort of back away from things. And the thing about the Aspen remedy is that they can't identify a specific fear. It's a vague, general state. So it's kind of all time, and it's hard to kind of pin down. It's hard to identify triggers in kind of more modern psychological terms. And it's just sort of the general state of somebody. And so as I started to mention, because they're constantly sort of like downloading or contacting or aware of these subtle energies around them, Like they might be like sleepwalking or talking in their sleep, or might have nightmares, or they may wake up in a panic because, again, there's this lack of ability to differentiate between self and others, even on this like subtle energy plane. And so as a child, for example, this might be somebody who needs, like a little kid who needs like the light on, or needs the door open, or they're afraid of the dark, because it helps them stay grounded. It gives them something, to kind of assuage their fear, because again, they don't quite know what to do with all these thoughts and feelings, and images that come to them, and they're overwhelming. Because the energies. And so, especially with little kids, you might find this, that they need a light or door open when they're sleeping. So this person tends to be sort of like the trembling leaf, the slightest breeze, the slightest change, the slightest new thing that comes up, they're very exquisitely sensitive to. And this might also show up as kind of mood and energy changes, because again, they might be fine, sort of coasting along for a while, but then all of a sudden it seems like out of the blue they pick up on somebody's energy, negative energy, or maybe negative energy from the news or some event, and it's just too much for them to handle, and it just kind of swings their own energy, really to, an extreme way. And this Aspen state can also kind of be a result of somebody who excessively meditates, or somebody who's had a history of drug use. Because again, it kind of, that sort of activity, these activities, meditation or drug use, they actually heighten your sensitivity to things. And so when you're that sensitive, you pick up on everything around you, and then it's sort of too much, and you don't quite know what to do with it all, and you get overwhelmed. So that's the risk of somebody who kind of stays in this Aspen state, is that they get lost or overwhelmed by thoughts and feelings that aren't even necessarily theirs. And one of my patients who comes to mind, who I gave Aspen to, that it worked really well for, she was, again, a very emotional person. She connected easily with people because, she had this sensitivity about emotions and subtle energies and stuff. But the thing is, if somebody said something, a little bit off, or with a harsh tone, or somebody did something, like, it just sent her into a tizzy, and she couldn't really get out of it. She couldn't kind of, shake it off and kind of stay focused on whatever she wanted or needed to do. She just got kind of like lost in other people's tidal waves. I guess that's the way I kind of saw it. Whenever she would tell me, she would share these stories about, she had her own business, and so like customers would say something or do something, or the customer would pass away, or this friend or this relative, it was just like this constant stream of stories, and every story, it was like this very like hypersensitive reaction. And she was, a very kind and caring person, but it's just everything. And she also had nightmares, and she would wake up panicked and anxious, and that was the worst time of day for her, because especially when you're sleeping, there's even less of a boundary between your conscious, focused mind, and just everything that's sort of streaming through your head. So anyway, I gave her the remedy, and within a few weeks, she was feeling much clearer, and she felt more confident, and she wasn't getting so sort of thrown off her own track because of what other people were doing or saying, or this event, or whatever. So it really helped her quite a bit. So the potential outcome with somebody taking the Aspen Bach Flower Remedy is that it lessens their fear and increases their confidence, and they become more grounded. It also, like, especially if there's a lot of sort of more dark fear involved with this, because they're so overwhelmed, they don't quite know what to trust. I mean, on some level, they know this stuff isn't theirs, but they don't know how to sort through it, and so it all feels like theirs. Is that they start to have some faith in something greater than themselves, some sense of greater order, whether you want to call it divine order or nature or whatever, that there's something larger than themselves that they can connect with, that will lead them through any sort of confusion or upsetting event without them getting, like, again, drowned by the whole thing. And the thing is that once people take this Aspen remedy, you know, it may seem like this hypersensitivity is a pathology, but, you know, for some people, their sensitivity is sort of their superpower. And so it may be once there's a little bit of mitigation with the Aspen symptoms and somebody gets a little bit more of a handle on how to work with energies, their own and other people, they can become really great teachers and healers and counselors, anybody who really needs like a high level emotional intelligence, because these people are like exquisitely tuned in to what other people are thinking and feeling and what they're motivated by. So they can be very helpful on those fronts. And they can also, because they're more tuned into these subtle energies, they can be particularly insightful with esoteric and spiritual matters. So there is potentially a silver lining. And it's just a matter of shifting things a little bit so that they maintain that sensitivity without, again, getting drowned or overwhelmed by it. So anyway, you know, the keynote with Aspen is unconscious fear. There are other remedies, Bach Flower Remedies, that may sound kind of similar, but they really are different. Again, I've always said that Bach Flower Remedies are really about subtlety. So another remedy one might consider is clematis. And this is for somebody who tends to live in kind of a fantasy world more than the present. And this might be sort of the artist or professor type. But the thing is, they're not afraid. There's no fear involved here. They're literally more engaged and interested in their inner life and world of ideas. It's more of a preference, but there's no fear involved. So that's how you might differentiate with clematis as a potential remedy for somebody. There are also a set of remedies. I've done another video on this of elm, hornbeam, oak, and olive. And it might also seem like at first glance, maybe, you know, this exhaustion, there might be some similarity here. But with these four remedies, the difference is that all four of these people in these four states, elm, hornbeam, oak, and olive, they've overextended themselves, and they've done excessive amounts of work and offered excessive amounts of effort. And so because of that, they're gutted out. And there are different motivations for overdoing it. And so I discuss in this other video the differences between these four remedies. There is another remedy for Bach Flower Remedy for fear, mimulus, but mimulus is different. Mimulus, they know what their specific fear is. They can identify. They can say, like, it's cars or it's snakes or it's dogs. Like, they know exactly what it is. It's not like this, again, pervasive all the time, vague, don't know exactly what triggered things type of experience. The other thing is that when somebody is in a very highly sensitive, overwhelmed state, from an Ayurvedic point of view, and Ayurveda is traditional Indian medicine, most likely this person is what we would call a high Vata or wind state. And so I have other videos in Ayurveda and specifically high Vata or wind conditions, because again, when people are in a high wind state, they tend to be overly sensitive, they get overwhelmed, and there could be a lot of fear involved. So you might be interested in that paradigm of medicine, which can be helpful. And then the other thing is sometimes people just aren't very good at self-care. And so the boundaries can be that they're not taking care of themselves. And because they're not taking care of themselves, they get overwhelmed by the needs and wants and activities of others. And so I actually have created another video on 20 simple things you can do as a self-care, as part of your self-care routine when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or experiencing some insomnia. So again, different paradigms of medicine that can be helpful in cases besides the Bach flower. So there you have it, the Aspen Bach Flower Remedy. Hopefully it's given you some insight into the subtleties of this remedy and how to match it up with a person who's experiencing some fear and anxiety, and to understand that it's really about figuring out what the deep motivation is, that's driving some of the behaviors in an individual. And then perhaps has also offered some other paradigms of medicine that can be helpful when somebody's in an anxious state, again, depending on what the cause is. and the level and depth of the experience. So thank you for your time, and until the next one, take care.